Hello, welcome pen friends. Welcome to day 8 of the 30 Inks 30 Days. And this is my color of the day. It's from Straits Pen Honest Ink in Singapore, and it's Poorman's Sapphire. It's a really bright blue. It's kind of along the lines of Noodler's Liberty's Elysium. And so here it is. I got it into the little ink journal calendar so we could look. And I really do enjoy this because we have quite a few blues, and as we go along we're going to be able to compare them. And I did want to see, you know, how it looked compared to Sailor Suitin, and there it is. It's quite a bit brighter, but it's not too terribly far away from that one. So let's go over to its own page. Let's see. Oh, I was going to go ahead and show you the bath test. So this turns out to be a very typical fountain pen ink in terms of its water resistance. It basically had none. This is the 20-minute test. I give all of the inks that I profile, and it's gone, completely gone. And we'll look at the chromatography down here in a minute, but here we go. I think I better cover up that really bright red, or otherwise we're going to get distracted. So here it is in the broad nib. And this has a very special availability. It's available at select pen shows internationally. So you have to check into when Straits Pen is going to be at the pen shows. And then online you can get it. But I will leave a link in the description box. Right now their website's not functioning. It says it's not working. But you email them and then you can go from there. So, but they do list the cost as 30 mils in a plastic bottle. I think it's a plastic bottle, PET bottle. And then SGD dollars, it's $20. And then in US, it's $14 for that 30 mil. And then for the 50 mil glass bottle, it's, I think this must be Singapore dollars, but I'm not really sure, $38. And then US for the 50 mil, it's $27. So you'll have to work with them directly on it. And I haven't done that. Mine came from samples that came right out of the ink journal number 30 ink flight. So it took about 30 seconds to dry in the broad nib, and I was seeing some shading, which I liked. Okay, and then I put it in the stub, and I really liked how it looked in there. And I saw some shading, some very interesting shading was coming through. That's a 1.5 Goulet stub. It was taking a long time to dry because that's a really juicy nib, so it was coming out of there like crazy. I mean, not necessarily fast, but that's a wet nib. So, okay, and I didn't mean to imply there wasn't good flow, because there was. Here's the fine nib, the Lamy fine nib. And so you can see how we go from that really intense brightness to a little less bright, but still it looked good. And when I printed, I got quite a bit of little subtle shading here and there. 30 seconds to dry in the fine nib. Okay, I put down here, no staining fears. I don't think there are anyway, because of the way it disappeared so easily off the bath test. But I'll give you a report on that later. Okay, because I'll be still writing with this all day. I've got several pen pal letters. This is the chromatography. It just shot right up, and you can kind of see a little light, maybe pink in there, and then it's blue. So it was pretty simple and straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this one here. I don't know if that's going to be handy or not. Probably not. And then we'll get out the Rhodia. This is Rhodia 80 gram or 80 GSM paper. Okay, there goes my cat. You may have heard him cry as he walked by. Okay, here it is in the broad nib. Spaced out on that part of the test, and it took somewhere between 30 and 40 seconds to dry out of that nib on this paper. And then in the stub nib, it was still smearing a little at 30 seconds, and I didn't hang out. I'm kind of impatient, I guess. I was seeing some shading that I really liked. I'm hoping you can see that. Some variation, I'd call it, in the letters, and I really enjoyed that. Okay, then in the fine nib, 25 seconds to dry. Maybe I didn't appreciate the experience as well in the fine nib, but that's just me, probably. Feels, okay, my note was, feels a little bit drier on Rhodia than Tomoe River, but still nicely saturated and good shading. Okay, so we'll put that here beside this one. And then we have one more. This is the CVS Caliber, the really inexpensive paper. That's probably not going to stay the way I want it, but okay. So here we have it in the broad nib. I liked it on here. There was no dragging, no fuss, where sometimes there is. If an ink happens to be too dry, you can't do much on this paper, but I did really well with it. About 40 seconds to dry, so it was behaving quite a bit like, well, yeah, it took a long time like it did on the Tomoe River. And then in the stub nib, it was over 40 seconds too. And then down in the fine nib, it was dry at 30 seconds. It was getting there at 25. I said a little bit dry in the fine nib on CVS, but that happens a lot, so that's not uncommon. I preferred it in these two nibs. I do think I see a brightness difference, but it's kind of hard to show. Let's see if we can. But it's not terribly different. There just is a difference. It really pops on the rhodium. And it's still, I don't think it lost much in those top two nibs, the broad and the stub. So let's lay them down just for a second anyway. You can compare them a little bit. And then, because this ink is so interesting, and online I was reading that it's supposed to mimic Parker Penman Sapphire, an elusive ink that was made between like 1993 and 2000, and now it's like you got to be a millionaire to get a hold of it, if you're lucky. So I decided, well, that's funny, because that when I looked into that Parker Penman Sapphire, it seemed that red sheening was a big deal with that. And I didn't myself see sheening with this ink. So I got out a little piece of 52 GSM Tomoe River paper to play. Because I thought, well, maybe I just wasn't on the right paper, or I wasn't seeing it. And although I see a lot of shading, I personally am not seeing sheening with the Straits Pen Honest Ink, the Poorman's Sapphire. But that doesn't, you know, shade-wise though, from what I was seeing online, yeah, it did look a lot like that ink that I didn't even know about until I read it on the paper from Ink Journal saying that this is an ink that kind of pays homage, I guess, to that other ink. But I thought it looked really pretty on here though, so I did go ahead and jot a little in the corner. You know, I've tried to cut these down just a little and not do quite as many ink sample papers and notebooks, because I'm doing a video a day and because I don't want to get discouraged. You know, it's early in the process here. But I can see the value in doing more like I normally do, where if I'm playing with the ink 2 to 3 days, I love to just try it on everything I have. But I didn't see red sheening. I did see a lot of shading, and I can't stop looking at that. That's pretty. So let's put these things away here. It's beautiful. There's no question in my mind. It's a beautiful ink. Okay, and let's get the comparison panel down so we can look at that. Oh, I got a new experiment. I played around with a tripod and everything, trying to get an angle that would be just a little bit better, but who knows? We'll try this. Okay, so our ink of the day is right in the middle, and it's in real good company here. Straits Pen Honest Ink, Poorman's Sapphire, right in the middle. Right beside it, I put Monteverde Horizon Blue. I can see red sheening on that ink. It does leave behind quite a bit of what they would call maybe haloing or sheen, and it shows up quite clearly there. Now I disturbed everything. Okay. I want you to be able to read the names of the inks. That's where I run into trouble. Okay. So then on the other side, I put Noodler's Liberty's Elysium, because the brightness and color of it really did remind me quite a bit of that. But this one does sometimes come with staining problems. And I don't believe we're going to see that with this one, but I'm going to keep a close eye on it. I'll be cleaning all the pens after I write my pen pal letters. I usually do that right before I go to bed to clean out all the 3 pens. So there's Noodler's Bay State Blue, because, you know, that's a little more intense. That's bright. And it's very permanent, and there are definitely staining problems with that one. So a lot of us are always looking into what can I use that won't kill my pens or whatever, you know, or you can dedicate a pen to that ink. That's not a problem really, unless you're me, and then I use a lot of demonstrators and I don't want to do that. But then Monteverde Capri Blue is definitely lighter, and probably I can see that better with my eye rather than through the camera and lighting. But it is lighter, but it is that beautiful blue. So I would say Horizon Blue comes closer in what I have, but I don't have everything. So this one I put on here, down here in the bottom left, is the Jacques Herbin blue something. Okay, it's going to be in the new, it's in the standard full line that we'll be reviewing in October. So I just wanted to see how it compared because I'm excited about those. And then Noodler's American Eel also begins to kind of depart the territory a little bit, but it's nice and bright, and it appears to move around real good. So you're getting into that not quite as scary ink and with that one, I think. However, I haven't done a full profile on that. So, okay, then Diamine Blue Velvet has a lot of red sheen. So if you're looking for the red sheen, that's one of them. And then, of course, there's some darker ones. There's Skull and Roses, but that puts you into a darker ink, I think, than this one. So let's look at the ones. Oh, Colorverse Supernova. Now that one, it's not exactly the same tone. It really isn't, but it's harder for me to show that, except if you will look at this part, you can see that better. You can see there's something else going on there, a little bit different color-wise, but there's a lot of red sheen in that one. So that's just to bring that to your attention. Now, let's look at some other colors, because a lot of times I get requests for, well, what does it look like beside Pilot Orochizuku Konpeki? Well, that's a lighter, more of a, oh, what do we call this? Like turquoise, I guess, sort of. So there's that comparison for you. And then here's a really dark one. Of course, a lot of these on the panel are dark. The Monteverde 2018 DC Super Show Blue, and that's got red sheen. So if you were looking for red sheen like what comes in that elusive Parker Penman Sapphire, I would suppose that would be pretty, because that's nice. That's the one I ruined. I mixed wrong when I emptied a pen into my sample, but that's me. And I think somebody's fixing to save me by sending me a sample, so please don't feel sorry for me. Okay, here's Krishna Ink's Moonview. Darker and lots of red sheen. It just takes over, kind of. So in writing it really shows up, you know. And it's out of, I think it's out of range color-wise. It's darker. And same with, my opinion would be that Skull and Roses is like way out there too, and it's got all that red sheen that just takes over. So even, you know, yeah, it's darker blue. Okay, and this is just for comparison. Diamine Oxford Blue is more of a navy blue or an office blue, and you know, it shows up with some red sheen here and there, even on the dots there. Okay, Bunga Box Hatsukoi almost made the panel, but it is lighter. It's enough different that I thought that it really kind of gets away. It gets away from what we're looking at here just enough. But that's a pretty ink, but it's also expensive though. If I remember right, it's definitely, yeah. Okay, here's Tasha AO Blue. Okay, that had a lot of red sheen too. And I don't think it's as bright. It feels darker, even though it's still bright. But I did see someone compare this one to that Parker Penman Sapphire, which I've never seen in person, just on the internet. Okay, so here's, let's see, I already have it. Diamine Majestic Blue, which has a lot of red sheen and kind of a different inner. It looks more like some of these other ones. See, it doesn't quite have the same thing going on, but I thought you might like to compare. Oh, and there's a duplicate. Yeah, I have some duplicates. Okay, so let's talk about what I thought of this ink. Here's a little book. The booklet comes from Brian at the Pen Thing. He sent it for the channel. And the little cover is something I had a long time. Okay, so it's Straits Pen Honest Ink Poorman'ssapphire. I put cheerful blue, no water resistance. Or at least that's what I'm seeing so far. We'll see when I go to clean. My test is usually cleaning out the converters. The Lamy converter especially hates me. I mean, that converter hates me. The Genhow cheap converters that come free on those pens I get for $5, they clean right out. But the Lamy converter just doesn't like me. So anyway, and I put shading is nice. I thought this ink was well saturated. I was almost trying to give it a 10, but I gave it a 9 with little sticks peeking out into the 10. I thought it had, you know, just above average flow. It was good. The shading was not spectacular, but it was there, and it probably would be in some of your nibs that are either vintage or flexible. And I'm just barely getting into that. I skipped bleeding and feathering. I'm not using papers that it'll do that on. Dry time, I felt like maybe fell somewhere in the middle. At times I felt like it was forever, but not from what I've seen in other inks. I guess I would say it was about average. I didn't see any sheen, but I kept looking for it like it must have it, so I don't know why I did, and I didn't see halo or shimmer in this ink. Overall, I gave it an 8, a nice strong number because it's pretty. And it seemed to behave very well for me. We didn't look at the back of the papers because this is what I keep doing. Let's do it as fast as I can make it happen. Sorry about that. I do like to do that because it is important to see, well, how much ghosting. A little bit of ghosting, which is normal on Tomoe River paper and on Rhodia. And that's why I was laying them out so I could remember, but haha. Joke's on me. Okay, we have to look at that bright red again, but there was hardly any ghosting and definitely no bleed through there. Okay, and then on this one, this is CVS caliber paper. Same thing, you can see some ghosting. It's more reminiscent of what you see on Tomoe River paper. In fact, this is the poor man's Tomoe River paper is what this is. You can quote me. This is the poor man's Tomoe River paper, in my opinion. And yes, it has its pitfalls every once in a while, believe me, and we all know that. But okay, let's look at the back of, so this is the 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. Oh, good call to look at that. That was painted on, and that was like splattered on with a ink syringe. So we get ghosting with the writing, not too bad though. More so with the stub. And then that's not really fair. Although I did paint this into the 68 GSM, it's just more hardy paper, and I painted it on particularly, you know, sloppy because I wanted to see if I could find red sheen. And I still kind of think, well, where is it? You know, I don't know why I think there is some. That's so funny. Okay. So now that I've completely lost track of what I'm doing, let's look at what's for tomorrow, because we're going to continue our exploration of Straits Pen Honest Ink. There's 8 of them. So tomorrow's day 9, and we're going to do Slowpoke Green. And I've got a lot of green fans here, including me now on the channel. So this will be a lot of fun. Why do I think I'm forgetting something very important? Okay, I just confess, I did not do the visual journal yet, and I'm not sure if I will. I'm more concerned right now with getting some pen pal letters written, because I was almost caught up and then I had a lot of mail yesterday. So the final question is, what did you think of Straits Pen Honest Ink? I recognize that we're just beginning with this brand. It's new to us, it's new to me, and probably to most people. In fact, when we got our ink flight, it was said that some of those inks we got before the general public, or before people in the US were able to get it, because it then came out like in August at the pen show in San Francisco, I think. Anyway, so we were kind of like early birds because of getting the ink flight subscription on at least 4 of them, I believe. So the other 4 I think had already been released. But what do you think of this? I think it's really pretty. Of course, it's a little bit different being, you know, we have to go out of our way if we want to get it. We got to find somebody who's going to the right pen show, or we have to do some emailing, checking, and maybe pen pal paying, and it'll have to come from Singapore. So it is something to think about. And if you have any questions that I can answer, since it is harder, I think, to get samples of this, unless you're an Ink Flight subscriber, and they don't pay me, I buy my own, and this is not sponsored, but I just want to try to do my best to help you know whether you'd want some of this ink, especially since it's not as easy to get samples. But it is easy to compare and maybe come up with something that you like in a compatible color, and you probably have more ideas. So now I've gone over 20 minutes. I will see you tomorrow with the beautiful green, Slowpoke green, and I can't wait to try that out. Bye for now. Thank you very much for being here.